It begins in a moment so small that most would pass it without thought. The world is quiet, and nothing seems to be waiting. The ground is still, the air unhurried, and time moves as it always does without asking for attention. And yet, in this unnoticed space, something rests where it does not belong. A boy walks slowly, not searching for anything, not expecting to find more than the path beneath his feet. His steps are light, careful, as though he has learned early that noise invites trouble. He knows the feeling of being unseen, and he carries it with him like a familiar coat. There is no crowd around him, no voice calling his name, no sign that this moment will matter. It is simply another quiet passage from one place to another. Then his eyes fall upon something lying where hands have forgotten it. It is worn, folded by use, and closed, keeping its secrets. He stops, not suddenly, just long enough to notice that his breathing has changed. The world does not pause with him. Birds do not stop. The sky does not shift. Only his thoughts begin to stir. He looks around. No one is near. No footsteps approach. No one is watching. And in that silence, a question forms, not spoken but felt. Why here? Why now? He bends slightly, as if unsure whether he should touch it at all. There is a carefulness in his movement, a respect for the moment itself. When he lifts it, the weight surprises him, not because it is heavy, but because it carries meaning. Some things weigh more than they appear. Some things press gently against the heart instead of the hands. He holds it for a moment longer than necessary, as though listening to it, as though it might speak. Inside, there is evidence of another life, small signs of effort, of work, of care, enough to tell him that this does not belong to someone careless, enough to tell him that losing it would matter. He closes it again slowly, and the quiet grows deeper. There is no rush, no sudden decision, only a soft tension spreading inside him. He knows what it means to go without. He knows the long ache of empty pockets and unanswered hopes. He knows the kind of hunger that is not always about food, and because he knows these things, the moment presses close. No one would know if he walked on. No one would question him. Silence offers protection. It always does, and for a brief moment that silence feels warm, almost inviting. It whispers that life has been unkind. The chances are rare that survival sometimes asks difficult things. But another feeling rises beneath that whisper, quieter, steadier. It does not argue, it does not demand, it simply waits. He thinks of nothing grand, no future reward, no punishment, only of the strange stillness around him and the sense that this moment has chosen him, not by chance, but by trust. And trust is a delicate thing. Once broken, it does not easily return. He looks again into the empty space around him. The road remains the same. The silence does not judge. It only holds the truth of who he will be after this moment passes. He exhales slowly. There is a calm forming now, not because the choice is easy, but because it is clear. Some moments do not announce themselves. They do not come with light or sound. They arrive quietly, asking not for attention but for honesty. And so, in a place where no one is watching, a decision begins to take shape, not in words, not in explanation. Only in the quiet understanding that what he does next will stay with him, long after the path moves on. The world continues, unaware, but something important has already begun. He does not move right away. The object rests in his hands, closed, patient, as though it knows it has been found but is waiting to see what kind of heart has discovered it. The quiet around him grows thicker, not heavy, but attentive. Even the smallest sounds seem distant now, softened by thought. There is a strange feeling that comes when something is placed in your care without warning. It is not pride, it is not fear, it is something in between, a careful awareness that what you hold is not truly yours, yet it is yours to decide over, if only for a moment. He feels that awareness settle into his chest. He walks a few steps, then stops again. Each step feels different than before, slower, measured, as if the ground itself is asking, him to be mindful. He wonders quietly about the hands that last touched this. Were they tired? Were they hurried? Did they notice the loss right away, or only later when it was too late to return? Questions arise without answers. They do not demand solutions, they simply sit with him. And with each question, the weight inside his chest grows slightly heavier. He opens it again, not out of curiosity, but out of certainty. He needs to know what this moment truly holds. Inside, there are small, careful signs of effort and order, nothing wasted, nothing careless. Enough to tell him that what he holds is important to someone who values little things. The silence tightens. It is no longer empty, it is full of meaning. He thinks about how easily life can change direction, how a single moment, unnoticed by others, can shift the shape of a person's story. He has lived long enough to know that many choices are loud, they announce themselves, they come with pressure and urgency. But this one is quiet. And because it is quiet, it feels more honest. There is a soft pull inside him now. Not excitement, not temptation exactly, more like a gentle reminder of his own needs. He knows what it means to want, to count days by what is missing, to feel the slow erosion of hope when effort brings little return. And because of that, the weight in his hands feels heavier than it should. No one is here to see his struggle. No one is here to offer advice. This is not the kind of moment others step into. It belongs only to him, and that makes it both simpler and harder. He closes it once more, pressing it lightly as if to keep its contents safe. The air feels cooler now, or perhaps he is more aware of it. His breath slows, deepens. He is listening, not to the world, but to himself. There is a quiet voice inside him, not sharp or accusing, just steady. It does not tell him what to do. It asks a simple question. What will you carry with you when you walk away from this place? He understands that whatever choice he makes, something will remain. Either a quiet heaviness that follows him, or a calm that settles slowly over time. Some things cannot be seen immediately. They grow in the dark spaces of the heart. He thinks of respect, not the kind given by others, but the kind one feels when alone. He thinks of how fragile that feeling is, how easily it can be lost, and how difficult it is to rebuild once broken. He knows that silence can hide many things, but it cannot hide them from oneself. The moment stretches unhurried. The world does not interrupt. And in that stillness, the weight shifts. It is no longer just an object in his hands. It is a question about who he is when no one is watching, about what he values when there is nothing to gain. He stands there a while longer, allowing the feeling to settle fully. There is no rush to escape it. Some moments deserve to be felt completely, and as he finally begins to move again, the path ahead feels unchanged, yet so. Something within him has already been tested. The weight remains not just in his hands, but in his awareness. And he knows now that this is not about loss or gain, but about what kind of quiet he wishes to live with. As he walks on, the quiet does not leave him. It follows at a respectful distance, like a shadow that does not wish to be seen. Each step carries him closer to others, and with that closeness comes a different kind of weight. Not the weight of the object he carries, but the weight of how silence can be misunderstood. When they notice him, their eyes linger just a moment too long. There is no accusation spoken, yet something passes between them, something thin and sharp. He feels it immediately. Way glances settle, then turn away, the way stillness becomes watchful. Silence, once gentle, now feels exposed. He does not speak, he does not explain. There is nothing in his face that seeks understanding, and because of that, they begin to fill the empty space with their own thoughts. Silence invites stories, and rarely are those stories kind. He senses it in small ways, in pauses that stretch too long, in looks that do not soften, in the absence of warmth where warmth might have been before. They do not know what he carries or why. They only know what they see and what they assume. There is a quiet ache in being misunderstood. It is not sharp like anger. It is dull, steady, and patient. It settles deep, reminding him of other moments like this, times when he OD quietly while others decided who he must be. He has learned that words do not always rescue a person. Sometimes they only deepen the noise. And careful, he could speak now. He could open his hands, open his story, and let everything spill into the open. He could correct the picture they are painting in their minds. And for a moment the idea brings relief, to be seen clearly, to be known, but the relief does not last. Understand something about explanations. They often serve the speaker more than the truth. They are sometimes born from discomfort rather than necessity, and he feels that his desire to speak is not about honesty, but about easing the quiet tension inside him. They continue to watch, not closely, not openly, just enough for him to feel the distance growing. He wonders if they have already decided. Their story about him is already complete. And if it is, what good would words do now? The silence stretches again, longer this time. And in that stretch, he feels alone in a way that is familiar, not abandoned, but unseen. There is a difference. Abandonment comes with loss. Being unseen comes with invisibility. He lowers his gaze, not in shame, but in reflection. He asks himself a soft question. Do I need their understanding to remain whole? The answer does not come quickly. It rarely does. He thinks of how often people speak not to share truth, but to protect their image. How often noise is used as a shield against judge me. NT. And he realizes that staying silent is not the same as agreeing with what is thought of him. Silence does not confirm false stories. It simply refuses to argue with them. There is pain in that refusal. He feels it. He does not deny it. But there is also a strange steadiness beginning to form. A sense that he does not need to carry every misunderstanding placed upon him. They turn away eventually, not because they understand, but because interest fades. Stories lose their strength when they are not fed, and still he says nothing. As he moves past them, the quiet returns to a gentler shape. It no longer presses, it no longer watches. It simply exists again, like breath. He knows now that being misunderstood is sometimes part of walking a quiet path, that not every truth is meant to be displayed. Some are meant to be lived slowly without defense, and as he continues on, the ache remains, but it is softer, wrapped in something steadier, a quiet knowing that his worth does not rise or fall with what they believe. The night grows deeper, the path remains, and within him silence is no longer empty. It is becoming a place of shelter. The thought does not leave him easily. It lingers, quiet but persistent. The thought that a few simple words could clear the air, that a brief explanation could soften what is hardened in the space between him and them. Words have that promise. They often appear as a bridge when silence feels like a wall. He feels the urge rise slowly, not sudden, not loud. It begins as a warmth in the chest, then spreads, asking to be released. It tells him that being understood matters, that dignity is fragile when left unguarded, that silence, though calm, can sometimes feel like surrender. He imagines speaking, not loudly, not with defense, just enough to be seen. He imagines their faces changing, their eyes easing, the tension dissolving as truth steps into the open. It is a comforting picture, almost peaceful, but as he holds that image, something unsettles him. He notices how tightly he is holding his breath, how his shoulders have lifted without his knowing. The desire to explain has stirred something restless inside him. It is not peace that drives it, it is discomfort, the discomfort of being misjudged, the discomfort of standing alone in a story written by others. He pauses and lets the breath fall back into its place. He asks himself another quiet question. If I speak now, who am I speaking for? Is it for truth or for relief? The question does not accuse, it simply waits. He listens inwardly, the way one listens for a distant sound in the night, and slowly he realizes that the truth does not feel threatened. It does not tremble. It does not ask to be defended. It rests calmly, unchanged by what others think. What feels threatened is his image, the fragile shape of how he is seen. And that realization brings a strange calm. He remembers moments from before, times when he spoke too quickly, eager to correct, eager to protect himself from misunderstanding. He remembers how words once released could not be gathered again, how explanations sometimes invited more questions, how silence once broken could not always be restored. The urge to explain is strong because it promises control. Control over how one is perceived, control over uncertainty. But control, he knows, is often an illusion. People hear what they are ready to hear. They believe what fits the shape of their own thoughts. He looks at them again briefly, not with resentment, not with longing, just with awareness. They are carrying their own stories, their own fears, their own quiet struggles. Perhaps their judgments are less about him and more about what they carry within themselves. This thought softens something inside him. He understands now that explaining himself would not truly change the moment. It might change their expressions, it might shift their tone, but it would cost him something. It would cost the stillness he has been carefully holding. It would pull him outward into noise, into reaction, and reaction has a way of leaving a person feeling smaller. The silence returns, but this time it feels different. It is no longer something he endures. It is something he chooses. And in that choice there is dignity. He feels the weight of the moment settle again, not heavy but firm, like standing on solid ground after walking on uncertain earth. The need to be understood loosens its grip, not because it no longer matters, but because it no longer rules him. He lets the urge pass without pushing it away. It drifts, like a thought that has been acknowledged and released. The quiet fills the space it leaves behind. There is relief in this quiet, not the relief of being cleared in the eyes of others, but the relief of being aligned with himself, of knowing that he has not traded his calm for comfort. He remains as he is, silent, present, whole. And as the moment moves on, he feels something steady take root, a trust in himself, a trust that truth does not hurry, and that what is real will reveal itself in time without force. The night holds him gently, the path stretches forward, and within him the temptation to explain fades into a quiet understanding that some things are best carried without words. In the space that follows, something begins to shift, not around him, but within. It is subtle, almost easy to miss, like the first change in the air before the weather turns. The noise he expected does not come. Instead, there is a deeper quiet, one that invites him inward rather than pulling him outward. He walks more slowly now, not because he is unsure, but because he is noticing things he once hurried past, the sound of his steps, the rhythm of his breath, the steady presence of his own thoughts. Silence is no longer something pressing against him. It is something he is standing inside. A realization forms without effort. He does not need to be seen in order to be steady. He does not need agreement to be certain. There is a strength that exists quietly, untouched by misunderstanding or praise. He feels it now, resting beneath the surface. He thinks about how often people measure themselves by the eyes of others, how easily worth becomes tangled with approval. And he sees, with a gentle clarity, how fragile that way of living can be. To depend on the shifting thoughts of others is to stand on moving ground. The truth he carries does not move. It remains the same whether it is witnessed or ignored. This thought settles him. He becomes aware of something else as well. The silence he has chosen is not empty. It is full of intention. It holds restraint. It holds respect, not only for others but for himself. And that respect feels grounding, like a hand placed quietly on the shoulder. There is no rush in this realization. It does not arrive like a sudden answer. It unfolds gently, layer by layer. He understands that inner power does not announce itself. It grows quietly, shaped by moments like this, moments where one chooses calm over reaction. He notices how his chest feels lighter now, how the tension that once sat there has loosened, the need to be understood has softened into something quieter, a knowing that his value does not depend on being explained. He pauses, just for a moment, and lets that knowing settle fully. It feels steady, reliable, like something he can return to again and again. He thinks of all the silence was mistaken for weakness, and he smiles inwardly, just slightly. Not because others are wrong, but because he now sees something they may not. Silence can be a shelter. It can be a boundary. It can be a place where strength rests. There is dignity in choosing not to react, not out of fear, but out of clarity. Not because one is small, but because one is grounded. This dignity does not ask to be recognized. It simply exists. The world around him remains unchanged. The path does not shift. The night does not respond. And yet everything feels different. He feels anchored in a way he has not before. He realizes that self-respect is quiet. It does not demand proof. It does not seek applause. It lives in the way one holds themselves when no one else is paying attention. It lives in the decisions made in stillness. This understanding brings a calm that is difficult to explain but easy to feel, a calm that does not depend on circumstances, a calm that stays even when things are uncertain. He moves forward again, carrying this calm with him. It is not heavy. It does not slow him down. It moves with him like breath, like balance. He knows now that this moment will stay with him, not as a memory of struggle, but as a quiet turning point, a place where something inside him aligned. And as he continues on, the night feels wider, more open. Silence no longer feels like something to endure. It feels like something to trust. In that trust, he finds himself whole, unshaken, and quietly strong. The choice is no longer forming. It has already been made, quietly, without ceremony. He feels it in the way his body settles, in the way his thoughts slow and line up gently behind one another. There is no tension pulling him forward now, no need to defend or correct, only a steady presence, calm and aware. He notices how different this feels from reacting. Reaction is quick. It burns hot and fades fast. It asks for attention and leaves little behind but exhaustion. This feels nothing like that. This feels like standing still while the wind passes around him, untouched. They may still think what they think. Their thoughts drift freely, shaped by their own fears and habits. He understands now that trying to control those thoughts would be like trying to hold water in open hands. The effort would only leave him empty. Silence becomes his answer, not as refusal, not as distance, but as choice. There is something powerful in not needing the last word, in not needing to shape the moment to fit one's own comfort. He feels that power now, quiet and grounded. It does not rise in his chest like pride. It settles lower, deeper, like a steady root. He walks on, and with each step, the urge to react fades further into the background. It no longer pulls at him. It no longer whispers promises of relief. He sees it clearly now for what it is, a habit, a reflex, not a necessity. He thinks of how often silence is filled by others with their own meaning, how why rush to explain it, label it, judge it, and yet, silence itself remains unchanged. It does not argue. It does not correct. It simply exists. There is freedom in that. He feels a growing respect for this restraint, not the kind that tightens or suppresses, but the kind that steadies. Restraint that protects what matters most inside. Restraint that keeps him from giving away his calm too easily. His breath moves evenly. His shoulders are relaxed. The moment no longer presses against him. It flows past. He realizes that reacting would have pulled him outward, into a space where his peace could be shaped by others. Silence keeps him inward, anchored to something that cannot be taken or shaken. There is no bitterness in this choice, no quiet anger hidden beneath it. That is important. Silence chosen in bitterness becomes heavy. Silence chosen in clarity becomes light. He feels light now. He allows the world to be as it is without needing to answer it. This does not make him distant. It makes him present, fully aware, fully grounded. He understands that not every moment requires a response. Some moments ask only to be witnessed, to be allowed to pass without resistance. This is one of those moments. The night seems softer now, though it has not changed. Perhaps he has. Perhaps choosing silence has opened a different way of seeing. He senses an inner boundary forming, gentle but firm, a line that protects his peace without pushing others away. He does not need to raise his voice to hold that boundary. He does not need to explain it. It is enough that it exists. He thinks of the quiet dignity in this, how strength does not always announce itself through action or speech. Sometimes it is revealed in what one chooses not to do, in the reactions left untouched, in the words left unspoken. There is no regret in him, only a calm certainty that this choice honors something true. He moves forward, carrying nothing extra, no defense, no story, no need to be right, just the steady rhythm of his steps and the quiet confidence growing within him. The moment fades behind him, but the feeling remains, a reminder that he can meet the world without flinching, that he can remain whole even when misunderstood. And in that knowing, silence is no longer an absence. It is a companion, steady, respectful, and strong. That time passes in a way that is almost unnoticeable, not marked by events or words, but by a quiet settling inside him. What he chose not to do begins to shape him more than anything he did. Restraint leaves a trace, though it is invisible to others. He feels it in small ways first, in how easily his breath moves, in how his thoughts no longer circle back to the moment with sharp edges. The memory is there, but it has softened, like a stone worn smooth by water. There is a kind of growth that happens only in stillness. It does not rush. It does not announce itself. It happens when the noise fades and the heart has space to rearrange itself gentle. He is standing in that space now. He realizes back he has gained something unexpected. Not approval, not understanding from others, but a deeper trust in himself. A sense that he can meet difficult moments without losing his balance. This trust feels quiet, but it is strong. It does not depend on circumstances. It does not waver with opinion. It is built from moments like this, where restraint was chosen not out of fear, but out of care. He notices how his attention has shifted. He listens more. He observes without immediately forming answers. He allows things to be unclear without feeling the need to resolve them. This patience feels new, but welcome. There was a time when silence felt like emptiness. Now it feels like space, space to think, space to feel, space to grow. He understands something important. When one reacts too quickly, the moment takes control. But when one waits, when one holds still, something deeper begins to guide the way. Not impulse, but wisdom shaped by calm. The world around him continues in its usual rhythm. People speak, move, assume. None of that has stopped. And yet it no longer pulls at him in the same way. He can see it without being drawn into it. There is strength in that distance. Not distance from people, but distance from the need to be pulled by every feeling. This distance allows him to choose his response or his silence with care. He thinks of how restraint has often been misunderstood, seen as weakness, as hesitation, as lack of courage. And yet, he knows now that restraint requires more strength than reaction. It asks one to sit with discomfort without escaping it. He has done that. And in doing so, something has changed. He feels more rooted, less shaken by small disturbances, more aware of what truly matters to him. This awareness feels like a quiet guide, always present, always steady. He notices that his respect for himself has grown. not loudly, not in a way that seeks validation, but in a simple, grounded way. He trusts his choices more. He honors his inner calm. There is no need to prove this growth. It does not need to be shown. It exists whether it is seen or not. That is its strength. He understands now that some lessons are learned only when one does nothing at all, when one resists the urge to fix, to explain, to react, when one allows the moment to pass and watches what remains. What remains is clarity. He moves forward with this clarity, carrying it lightly. It does not weigh him down. It steadies him. It reminds him that growth does not always come from action. Sometimes it comes from restraint. The night feels deeper now, but not darker. More spacious, more open. Silence wraps around him again, familiar and kind. And within that silence, something strong continues to grow, quietly, patiently, unseen but enduring. The night begins to thin, though the quiet remains. Not the kind of quiet that waits for something to happen, but the kind that rests in what already is. He walks without thinking of the moment that came before, not because it was forgotten, but because it no longer asks anything of him. There is a calm inside him now that does not shift with memory. It sits gently, like something earned without effort. He notices how natural it feels, how little it demands. Peace, he realizes, is not an achievement, it is a return. The world around him continues as it always has. Paths remain paths, shadows fall where they fall. Nothing has been rearranged for his sake, and yet everything feels settled, as if the inner noise that once followed him has finally grown tired and gone quiet. He does not feel proud. Pride would disturb this stillness. He does not feel relieved either, because there is nothing left to escape. What he feels is acceptance of himself, of others, of the moment as it unfolded. There is comfort in knowing that not every story needs a clear ending spoken aloud. Some endings happen inwardly, where no one else can see. These are often the truest ones. He pauses for a moment, not because he must, but because stillness feels natural now. He listens to the quiet the way one listens to a familiar song, not searching for meaning, simply letting it be. He thinks about how strength often goes unnoticed, how the strongest moments are rarely dramatic. They arrive softly, leave quietly, and stay with a person long after they have passed. This was one of those moments. There is no urge to revisit it, no need to lay it in his mind. The lesson has settled where lessons belong, beneath thought, beneath words. He understands now that peace does not come from being right, or being seen, or being understood. It comes from alignment, from choosing in a way that does not fracture the self, from walking forward without carrying the weight of regret or reaction. His breath moves easily, his body feels light. Not because life has become easier, but because he is no longer resisting it. Resistance was heavy. This acceptance is not. The silence around him feels complete, not empty. Complete, as though nothing is missing and nothing needs to be added. He knows there will be other moments, other choices, other times when silence will ask something of him, but he is not thinking of those now. This moment stands on its own. There is a quiet gratitude in him, not directed outward, not tied to any event, just a gentle appreciation for the steadiness he feels, for the knowledge that he can trust himself in stillness. He moves again, slowly, calmly, without urgency. Each step feels unburdened. The path does not promise anything. It does not need to. He carries nothing but awareness, nothing but presence. And as the night continues to hold him, there is no sense of striving, no reaching ahead. Only the quiet understanding that peace is not found by adding more, but by releasing what no longer needs to be carried. He remains inwardly strong, not hardened, not distant, simply whole. The quiet stays with him, not as an absence of sound, but as a presence of calm. And in that calm, everything feels enough.